Hey guys, my name is Jason. I'm here today to show you some basics of Vectorworks. I am using Vectorworks 2014. If you have the educational version, more than likely you'll have 2016. The differences are pretty minor, so everything that I show you here should translate into 2016. First thing I'm going to talk about is setting up your workstation. When you first load into Vectorworks, your screen should look something similar to this. The first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you are in the correct workspace. So if you go up to Tools, go down to Workspaces, and you want to make sure you are in Spotlight. Spotlight is the lighting design equivalent for Vectorworks. It has all of the very specific tools and is where you will do all of your work. Once you are in the correct work space, the next thing you need to know about is layers. If you have ever done anything with Photoshop, the layers work exactly the same here, and that is usually over here when you first start out. I can pull that out here. It will default to the Class tab. You generally don't have to worry about classes. Classes are very complicated and is not something I'm actually going to go into. So what you actually need to do is click on the second tab, which will open your Layers tab. And so now currently I only have one layer. If you right click on it, you get a number of options. I'm going to edit the layer that I currently have. The next most important thing about your layers, stage. Let's call it stage. Next most important thing about your layers is your scale. Once you set the scale on one of your layers, as long as you don't have other layers created, it will automatically set the scale for all of your additional layers. And then depending on what size of paper you're going to be printing on, I'm generally a fan of 1/4 inch scale or 3/16 scale. For this demonstration, I'll be using 1/4 inch scale. If in the future you want to change your scale, you can do that. Just make sure that you change all of your layers to the same scale, otherwise your drawing is going to look very weird. Alright. The other thing that I do is, if you don't like all of these toolbars taking up space, you can undock them from the sides, and they all have up in the top right corner this little pin. And if I click that little pin and now it's facing to the left, when I deselect that, it goes away. If I mouse over it, it'll come back, but for the most part it will just stay out of the way. If you don't have two monitors. If you do have two monitors, you can shuffle all these off your workspace and get your workspace to just be a nice clean sheet of paper. But if you don't, I would highly suggest just maneuvering all of these somewhere sort of together wherever they make sense, but click the little icon in the corner and it will get them out of the way when you don't have them selected. Like so. And then you can line them up wherever you want them to be. Keep them off my... generally out of the way, taking up less screen real estate. Alright, so the next thing to start out is the basic tools, which is conveniently labeled under basic. The primary tools you're going to use the most is obviously the pointer tool, the pan tool, which the keyboard or the shortcut for the pan tool, which is basically just how you grab your page, is if you hold down the middle mouse button, it'll grab it automatically. Otherwise, if you select the pan tool, move around, look around on your page. The text insert tool, which allows you to put in text. The drawing tools, lines, double lines, rectangles, rounded rectangles, circles, ovals, arc, free draw, and polygon tools. And that's 99% of what you'll use. If you want to find out what all these other tools do, there are a lot of cool things that they can do. But like I said, this is going to be your basic tutorial for Vectorworks. So I'm really going to only show you the things that you need to get a light plot going. So those are your primary tools. So now using these primary tools, we are going to create a quick ground plan. I believe in my longer video I used Moliere's Play the Misanthrope, so we will continue to use that as my example. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create just a general square. For those of you wondering, this little box here is your printable space. We can just sort of ignore that for now. It won't matter a whole lot. If you click and hold the pan button, you can move your printable area. The other thing to note is you can also set where your 0, 0 is. If you look on the sides, you can see your rulers. If you go up and click this little thing in the center, it'll pop up with a warning. Are you sure you want to change the origin? Well, I don't really want to, but that's how you do that. We will want to change it once I start drawing. So first, I'm going to set up a box that represents my stage. Let's just do the stage first. So I know that my stage for this particular theater is, the backstage is 55 feet wide, and the plaster line to the back wall is 30 feet. So if you've ever taken basic geometry, if you'll notice those two letters on the bottom right where my pointer is, the X and your Y. So I said my X wanted to be 55 feet. So if you hit tab, it will highlight those. The apostrophe stands for feet. The quotation marks stand for inches. So we wanted 55 feet wide, and we want, what did I say? Oh, I can't remember. Say 32 feet long. And there it goes. If you're wondering why it went up instead of down, is if your numbers are positive, they will go from the origin up to the top of the screen, and same with your x-axis. If you put a positive number in your x, it will start from your origin and move to the right. If you want them to go the opposite directions, you put in a negative number. But that's okay. So, and then let's say I have, so then let's say my opening in my theater is, the proscenium is 8 feet off the back wall, and opens out onto I have a nice little area in front of the stage that's 7 feet. One of the easiest ways to give yourself internal markers is to just draw a line. So if it's 7 feet off the edge, if you hold down Shift while you're drawing a line, it automatically locks it to either a angle or whatever you want it to go to. So 7 feet. Oops. Stop. 7 feet. I want it to be 7 feet. So now that I put in those two lines, I can lock onto it. See, there's my endpoint for that line, and I want this to be endpoint to this line. If I hold it over for a little bit, I'm not creating dados. Oops, smart points. I'll create a nice little smart point, and then I know that my apron is 5 feet, so I want negative 5 feet. Whoops, didn't do something right there. Endpoint, negative 5 feet. There we go. So there's my little proscenium. Go back to my, and then we actually want to, instead of having these be solid white, I actually want these to be empty. So your attributes have to do with whatever you've selected, and I want those to be empty because I'm going to put a stage on here. I like to leave this line here because it represents your plaster line, which technically is the back of your proscenium. And then if you want to, you can also put in a line that represents your center line. If you want to just draw a little line, make sure it's selected, go back over to attributes. If you click on the center one, you can do thickness, but then you can also do, if you click on pen style, you can change it into some fancy lines, but we just want a dotted line. So there's our center line. So now we want to create a quick set. 95% of your sets can be created almost entirely out of straight lines. So let's say I want my little box set, and you can do this exactly the same. With lines, you enter in length instead of XY coordinates, so you can get it to give you however long all of your walls are. Say that wall is 10 feet, and then you can do this to all of your walls. But since I'm just doing a quick mock-up, it doesn't really matter. And all I am doing at this point is I'm just using the line tool. So there are all my walls. Then let's do a quick table. I want this table to be a 6 foot by -4 foot table. So there's my table. I don't want it to be solid though. I'm going to draw some chairs. Also, to zoom in, if you've been wondering how I've been zooming in and out, just use your mouse wheel. Otherwise, under your tools, there is a zoom tool. I don't generally like to use the zoom tool because mouse wheel works infinitely better. Some chairs. Again, I've only used the rectangle tool and the line tool. And then I'm just going to copy paste. So Control C, Control V. Making some chairs. Move this guy a little bit closer. Oops. If you need to nudge things, if you hold down Shift and press the arrow keys, it'll shuffle them around. I want a door on this wall. If I want to get really fancy, we can do an arc like that. I used the 4th arc mode, which is this guy right here, center mode. It gets a little too archy, but that's okay. And then we just have to remember to take out the thing there that represents our door. And let's say we put a little window. Whoops. Because I need my 3-point rotating mode. Most of these objects, most of the tools, if you highlight over them, will give you a brief description of what they do, which is very handy. And then a rug. 2 points. Nice big rug. So now that we've created this very basic ground plan, here's our basic ground plan. You should always label your ground plan. So we're going to label our ground plan. This sounds really silly, but this is exactly what you should do. Helps if I can spell. Helps if I could spell. where you grab an object also corresponds with how it lines up to things. Oops. So if I grab it in the center, I can move it to the center, and it does all of that for me. Move rug to the center, door. Window. Boom. Cool. There's my basic theater. There's my basic ground plan. You should probably label your center line and your plaster line. In most plots, it's usually a lot fancier than that, but we don't really need to be that fancy. Cool. So there's a basic ground plan. The other thing I'm going to show you to do real quick now that you have your basic ground plan is I'm going to show you how to whip up a quick lighting key. And your lighting key is going to be just as simple, but to do your lighting key, I'm going to put that on a different layer. So now I have my stage layer, and so I'm going to add, if I'm going to right click on this, click on new, I'll bring this up. I want this to be lighting key. Okay, so now it automatically puts any new layers onto the top layer. You can adjust that by clicking on the number and dragging. Now it's layer 2, but we'll keep it back up on layer 1. Also notice that this other layer just grayed out, and that's because I'm currently in gray snap others for my layer options. And all of these do something a little bit different. Gray snap others means that I not only can I see it grayed in the background, but it will also let me snap to any of the corners, any of the circles, any of the points that you could normally attach lines and boxes to. You can do this to the gray ones. If I just click gray others, it won't let me snap anything to this. It just sits it in the background. Active only shows only my active layer. If I say show other, it doesn't gray it, just puts it as normal, all of its normal thickness. If I say show snap others, normal thickness, but now I can attach things to it. And then show snap modify others means that even if I'm not in the active layer, I can muck with any of this. Be careful using that layer or that option, because you can, if you try to add something to this layer, it won't, because it's not your active layer. To go back to that active layer, you simply click the little space in front of it, and it'll move the check mark to that, and that's your currently active layer. So I usually like to use gray snap others so that I know what my active layer is. So real quick, to make a lighting key, I'm just going to scoot my page over a little bit and right next to it. So all a lighting key is, if you watched my other video, all it is it represents a simple focus point. So there's my focus point. All I did was draw a little circle using the circle tool, and then the rest I'm going to do is draw lines to represent my lighting directions. So for this show, let's say I'm going to use 1, and then to add on the arrow. So I just drew my arrow. Under attributes, I can add little arrows to it, just like that. I'm going to use 1 set of front lights. I'm going to use 1 set of diagonal lights going from each direction. These are not, they don't look very pretty. I'm going to use 1 set of backlights. But I'm going to scooch that over because I also want 1 set of downlights. And then the only other piece of information I'm missing are my colors. So this guy is going to be R21, nice red amber. It's going to be R65, nice blue. R51. I want my downlight to be R80, nice dark blue, and my backlight to be R14. Famous lighting designers once said, if you want people to applaud, you bathe people in amber backlight. Standard computer clicking rules apply. If you want to select multiple things, hold down Shift, and then it will let you click multiple things. So we want to go to all of those, go over to my object info, which will tell me about whatever I just clicked. So I just clicked all of my text boxes. I actually want to make them bigger. Go it up 24 point, a little bit bigger, 28. There we go. Cool. And there's a basic representation of my lighting key. I'm now going to use this to formulate the rest of my lighting plot. And that's it for this video. In the next video, I'll talk about how you take this lighting key and transfer it into a light plot, one step at a time. Thank you.